This video will practice using completing the square to convert our function that is in standard form into vertex form. So our job is to convert f of x is equal to negative x squared minus 6x minus 8 into vertex form. One of the first things we need to do is to review what it is to be completing the square. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that we have 1x squared. The other thing I would make sure we do is we're going to get whatever the coefficient of x squared, we're going to factor it out. And then we're going to have x squared in here, and then we're going to have maybe a possible number. We'll put it in a box, and x, and then we can have numbers out here. But I wanted to make sure that we create that parentheses. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to go find h and h squared. And the hint of the day is h is equal to half of whatever is in that box that was in front of x. The third thing we're going to do is we're going to add h squared into the parentheses that we created up here in step number 1, and we're going to subtract a times h squared on the outside. That a is this number that we have in front of our parentheses. And then the last thing we're going to do is to factor our parentheses, and it will factor into x minus h squared. And I'm going to put plus or minus because it could be a positive number or a negative number. And after we factor the inside, we're going to add the numbers that we have on the outside. So we're going to show you that in just a second. So let's use our function of f of x is equal to negative x squared minus 6x minus 8. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to get the coefficient of x squared, which in this case is negative 1, and I'm going to put it on the outside. And I'm going to have x squared here, and I'm going to have minus 8 on the outside. Because remember, we only want x squared and x inside of our parentheses. And I did a GCF of negative 1, so I'm going to divide this by a negative 1 and I'll get plus 6x. You can always check yourself that when I do the distributive property, I get negative x squared. And when I do the distributive property here, I get negative 6x. So it's working what we want it to do. Step 2 is to go find h and h squared. So remember, h is equal to 1/2 the number in front of x. And in this case, it's a positive 6. Half that number is 3. Then I'm going to square that number. 3 times 3 is 9. So I'm going to add 9 inside my parentheses. So I'm going to rewrite it. So I have negative, I have x squared plus 6x minus 8. So I haven't done anything. Now I'm going to add that h squared. So that's going to be plus 9 inside the parentheses. And I need to subtract. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this a value times this 9. I'm going to multiply. And then I'm going to put it out here with the subtraction. So remember, you want to subtract. So let's see what we get. We have a negative times a 9. That's going to be a negative 9. And remember, we're subtracting it, so we actually have a double negative there. So we're going to find that this is negative x squared plus 6x plus 9. I have negative 8, and then these two negatives become a plus 9 out here on the outside. We're almost done. We need to do step number 4 that says what we need to do now is to get our f of x. We're going to have our negative on the outside. We're going to factor this perfect square trinomial into x and 3, because that's what our h was, and square it. Now notice we can see that this is a perfect square trinomial, that this also has to be a plus. I'm just going to do a quick memory here, that this means x plus 3 times x plus 3. And when I multiply it, do FOIL or whatever you do, you're going to see that you're going to get x squared when you multiply x times x. You're going to get 9 because you're going to multiply 3 times 3. And on the inside you have 3x and another 3x. That's where that 6x is coming from. So we have factored it correctly. And the hint of the day is going to be that it's going to be your h value, and if this is a plus, then this is a plus. If this middle term is a minus sign, then this will be a minus sign. So that's pretty cool. And then we just add the numbers on the outside. That's going to be plus 1. So we're done. We have converted our function that was in standard form into something that is in vertex form. While it's in vertex form, there's a couple of things that you can tell me. One, you can tell me the vertex. We remember that we have our horizontal translation to the -3, and I have a vertical translation to a +1. That's where our new vertex is going to be. And we also know that from the x value that the axis of symmetry will be at x is equal to -3. That concludes this video.